One of the reasons that we have been quoted to have embarked on this project has been because of a concern around safety for our community, and you've stated that very clearly in this report. And you've got some numbers here that are demonstrating some of the collision rates. And I'm just wondering if you could help us tease those apart. In 2015, we've got 30, or they're not collisions solely, they're mortality rates of the deer. And because I'm trying to understand the safety issue, mortality doesn't necessarily by itself inform safety issues.
No, I don't have those before me. I can probably tease that out a little bit, but it's not something that we have spent a great deal of time trying to determine sort of the reasons for the deaths. I can tell you that the majority of them have been altercations with vehicles. There have also been ones that have just found their way to the public works yard, so we're not really sure, but we haven't sort of done further investigation. But I am pretty sure to say that the majority of them are vehicle.
So then the other question I have, I know one of the other indicators that you've used has to be to do with ongoing citizen complaints about the deer. Can you give us a sense of the number of complaints and the nature of the complaints that you're receiving still, and sort of are they like in terms of when they're coming in? Are you getting more now or fewer now than previously? Can you give us some marker of that?
Again, I think we identified this in our lessons learned. It wasn't something that we were doing well. So we still don't have a full-fledged tracking system because the complaints come to various sources. They can either come through the police, or they can come through our public works, or through the municipal hall, or they come directly to me. In fact, I got one today. And it was basically, the gist of it is people that are describing being fearful in their yards and concern about spooking the deer so that they would run out into traffic. There's concerns about that, concerns about personal safety for children or for elderly. Those are the kinds of things that we're hearing. It kind of comes in bits and pieces. We obviously get them at certain times of the year, particularly around rutting time. But in terms of giving you a number, I haven't compiled that for you tonight.
In the May 11th pilot project lessons learned report, I think if I recall, lesson learned number 1 was we need a tracking system because no complaints could be found whatsoever, no official complaints could be found whatsoever with respect to deer. Is that true from if you could please correct me on that?
No, I don't think that's correct. I think we didn't have a tracking system in terms of actually the volume or the types. Basically they were coming in from all sorts of places. So it's not that there wasn't any, there was. It was not a method by which we were collecting them and being able to group them.
So there were no numbers or no examples, but there was a sense there were a lot.
Well, I can tell you that there were a number of letters, there were a number of phone calls, there were a number of emails, there were ones that were coming directly to staff as well as ones that were going to council members.
Well, please forgive me, and it was a previous council that approved this process, so I'm still getting up to speed on it. I noticed at the end you do also make reference that there are complaints still forthcoming. And I appreciate the question from Councillor Ney, and I would definitely appreciate getting some indication of the nature and the total number of complaints if possible. Here as a councillor, the only really numbers that I have to go on is I've been tallying the people that have come to the mic during public participation. And by my count, I've got 19 people coming to the mic saying absolutely have no call whatsoever. And I've had 3 people come to the mic that I've heard saying we need to eradicate the deer, kill them all. So 19 to 3 to me tells me that we probably shouldn't be called, is the sense that I've gotten in terms of those who have been moved.
Just have a question.
Is the sense. No, just the question has to do with the number of complaints and the nature of the complaints.
Ask the question, please.
I find the most recent deer report, number of deer calculation kind of hard to follow. I wonder if you can provide an explanation. It says that there's 1 deer for every 2 kilometers of road, but there's no reference to how many kilometers of road we have in Oak Bay, so I don't know how many deer that comes up to. And it seems like we're always talking about the number of deer versus the not number of deer versus the number of deer that are getting fatalities by car. So how many deer is the best estimate that we have in Oak Bay?
I feel comfortable on this, making decisions on imperfect information, because we can't know how many deer there are. We could probably spend the next 20 years counting deer, but of course we would have gone through 15 generations by that point. So a process that would improve our decision-making criteria. The one that comes to my mind is a survey. It'd be nice to have a firm number of all the people in Oak Bay and their actual opinions on this. Also, that you would see that would be a feasible source of information that we should sort of wait for prior to making decisions or moving down the decision-making path.
Councillor Murdoch, I'm not sure that I can give you an informed decision. It hasn't been something that I've thought about. The report, as I explained, was to basically tie off what the pilot project was. I haven't given thought because I haven't been given direction from council in terms of what council is wanting. So I haven't, and until I have that, I think I can't.
No, I think that's a fair answer, so thank you.
The CRD appears to be taking a more passive role with regards to urban deer management. Is that because they're trying to push it back on the province, in your opinion, or?
If the CRD has decided that this is no longer their area of where they're going to spend their time and money, I'm not sure that it's such a good idea that Oak Bay continues to spend our time, staff time and money on this project that requires the expertise of wildlife biologists and the like to execute. We have, I think, it was one thing to participate in a pilot project with the CRD, to show some leadership to the rest of the CRD. It's a whole nother thing to go it alone. And I don't think it's our place to do so. Stroke our egos enough by saying, you guys, in Oak Bay, the school really needs your attention, and the kids in Oak Bay are special, and I think that you need an Oak Bay solution, a Made in Oak Bay solution for the education needs of the children in Oak Bay. Are we going to step in and build a school or start providing the educational needs that the province is responsible for? No, we would never do that. Why would we consider that? We don't have an expertise in providing an education to children. We don't have an expertise in deer management, in wildlife management as part of the pilot project, but an additional $30,000, which will grow from past experience. It started off at 25 and it ended up much higher. Is that what we want to keep focusing our energy on? No, right? Like we just talked about affordable housing. That's a really big issue. That's going to take a lot of time and energy. I'd much rather spend our time talking about that than talking about deer.
But I do have a sense that we could do a lot more around education. When I hear about the nature of the complaints for our community, I think that we could ramp up the way we're providing support and education to our community. I'm really concerned that so many people in our community feel afraid of deer. I don't hear that in other communities. So I don't at all. I don't agree that we should engage in a cull. It's way too divisive for our community. I think our community has gone through the ringer, and I think they're exhausted, and I think it's very unsettling, the cull. And I'm not convinced from everything I've read that it's even going to be effective, particularly given we don't have regional support. We take a cull, my understanding there's this term they call sinkhole, and we will create immigration, which could possibly increase the number of deer in our community. And it also sets us up to cull year after year after year. And as I've already said, I think it's just too divisive for our community. But I would be, I've gone through the UWSS proposal that isn't in our package here tonight, at least I didn't see it, but we did get it in our emails. And they've provided, I think, a very comprehensive proposal with numerous kinds of options that are part of a comprehensive deer management program. And I find that proposal the most thoughtful, well-written, well-researched proposal that's come my way. And
The UWSS proposal, I believe also was extremely well thought out and presents, from my perspective, seems to answer a lot of the concerns that I have around urban deer management here in Oak Bay. In addition to the educational aspect, which I feel also in some ways, my personal opinion, that we've been a bit lacking on overall, and also continuing the research aspects.
I think that, if there's one thing that we can do well as a small community is we can do practical on the ground work, be that a cull, be that the contraceptive model, be that some sort of animal control. A couple $100,000 and change were spent through the CRD, through miscellaneous committees and consultants and so forth. It was all required by the province to do that. At the end of the day, we have now all of the forms completed and T's crossed and I's dotted, and we're kind of ready to go forward. If we have a project on to go with, then we can get funding help, won't fund it, but funding help. So I'm supportive of that. I think that we have to not ignore the very large number of people still having issues with deer in our community. And I think that ultimately, just deer being what they are, we're probably going to have to manage them in the population in some way. And I don't think the more we delay doing that, the more expensive it gets as the population grows.
I just have a quick point, that $100,000 divided by 13 communities that have been invited is still only $7,600 and change, which will not dent the process. That's just a very tiny bit of money, considering we spent much more on our small pilot project, which did not last long and consumed our staff for many months and embroiled the community in a discussion. I think only now the Oak Bay News has finally slowed down on the letters. Nope. And is this how we want to spend our time and energy in 2016?
Thank you.
Shouldn't be rushing to put in a grant application. We also shouldn't be rushing to throw $30,000 into a budget or provisional budget without having a plan in place, without having an understanding in mind that this is going to take a lot of time and energy from our staff, and that this is not our responsibility. These aren't our deer. We participated in the CRD pilot project and we were the only ones that did so. I think we learned some lessons, and I think we need to remember those lessons.
Okay. Thank you. Anything that you have an opportunity to ask us now, Ms. Coney. Is everything fairly clear for we actually have a meeting? Because I think there's going to be more discussion of that, and I think at that point you can join in to say, to give us a kind of an overview of what we can truly accomplish and how much it would cost. Ballpark. Okay.
I do think what council is asking is unrealistic. I think it's beyond the scope of our capacity to expect that we would be able to pull together all of this information, because you're asking for options that are across the board, and there's no sort of focus on, is cull considered in that? The immunocontraceptive, I haven't done any background work on that. And so part of it you're asking in terms of some information with expertise that we don't have, that would require us to do some research. And so I think if council is duly wanting staff to do this, that's going to be relevant and good reference material, I would probably have to take away some of this and find out how we can find somebody to do that. Because I just don't think it's within the realm of all of the other things that we have on our docket, something that's realistic. That you're trying to get to, because I think that hasn't actually been identified as well. What is it that you're trying to get to? So when you're even talking about these options, what's the baseline in terms of what are you trying to achieve? Because going through all of these options, that's what I see as I'm going through my head. So to what extent? How much? What's the level? Because you're asking me to put together some options and some costing of those when I don't even know where to start in terms of, is it 25, is it 50, is it 75 when we're doing immunocontraceptive, is it 75 transferred out, is it 2, is it, I don't know how to measure that.